Hello.
Hello.
Uh,
Hi, Terry.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. How are you? I'm
hanging in
Oh.
there.
Hi, Dick.
Um,
Oh,
okay. You all see that?
Yep.
thank you.
I'm gonna go outside and sit on my porch.
Sounds nice. Take us with you.
It is nice.
What's the temperature out there, Terry? What do you?
It's supposed to be a high of 87 today.
Oh my, it's
oh.
cool.
That, that's
Yeah.
not too bad. Yeah,
It's
that is
supposed to be
cool.
79 in New York right now with a high of 80. Where is our keynote speaker?
What's the tempo?
All right.
Well,
We're at our usual 60, something like that.
Oh
yeah,
my.
87.
Invite link. Copy. Um, no,
Well,
no.
the heat down here has been Florida's bad, and it's going to get worse. So,
Yeah.
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 I went to summer school at University of Miami, and when we left in August, we were so happy to get out of that
It's
hot,
a balmy
hot, hot
62 in
place.
Seattle. I mean, Lopez.
When I was packing, I said, "Oh, I better take a sweater in case it's cold." My ex-wife said, "It's never cold."
I, I
She's
I
right.
think it might have gotten cold once. I think in 1981. I think maybe.
Not in the summer,
I
really.
remember summers at the beach when we used to bring a sweater because the evening would get chilly.
Oh yeah. That's-
I don't know if that's so true these days.
If it never got cold, I'd be happy. If I even ever
Oh
got
no.
warm, I'd be
Yeah.
happy. 'Cause it's below 60 here in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, I love my four seasons. I get bored.
I grew up with four seasons. I grew up in St. Louis, but now here I am up in Northwest
Mm.
Washington.
Uh-huh.
And I've never acclimated.
In 1966, when I went to advanced nuclear power training in Schenectady, New York,
Ah,
the temperatures were always 20 below zero, it seemed. This
yeah.
was
Oh,
in the winter.
Mm. Yeah.
We had a thermometer at the gate into the plant, and when it would get to zero, we would all cheer. It's a heat wave.
Oh,
oh,
gosh. Yeah,
God.
I was in Marengo, Illinois, outside Chicago for a couple of years, and those winters got real cold. I remember the minus 14s and the wind. Yeah.
Oh,
I also
make it.
remember watching thunderstorms come from quite a distance along the plains. That was pretty cool.
Mm.
Yeah, we've had a few of those.
Back.
On the 4th of July, we got 6 inches of rain, and several of we were having a UU potluck. Several of them couldn't make it because they got flooded out.
Oh boy.
One person looked like they had a river running through their lower level, where there were three
Oh my
bedrooms
gosh.
and their TV room.
Oh boy.
Mm. Mm. What was this? Was this?
That was
What
last
state
a
was
week
that?
ago Saturday,
Yeah, we had a
Oh my
in
bad
God.
Iowa.
storm. I've seen a lot of trees and branches down, Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Can you
hoping we
make me a
wouldn't get a big
co-host so I
wind after 6 inches of rain, because
Yeah,
that'll
right?
take down trees like crazy.
Sure. Sure. Soil is loose. Terry, can
Mm.
you make me a co-host so I can watch the waiting room?
Yeah, let's see. Uh,
Yeah, it shows we have 9 participants and I only see five.
it says
Check your
not 15
settings.
here.
you may have a setting that you don't see people without live cameras because I'm seeing
Oh,
none. And so two of us are in black boxes. A couple of us have static images. So that would be the four. Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. Oh, five people are in the waiting room, so let me bring them in.
Come on in.
Admit, admit all.
Oh, I see. Not all.
All right.
So I don't have a live camera, huh? So you can't see me.
Bill, I always see you.
You do? I
Yep.
don't see me.
You may have a setting that says don't show my own picture.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
It's okay. Greetings all.
Like I said, I'm just getting new to all my new stuff.
All right.
New software, new phones, new email, and all that good stuff.
Oh boy. Yeah, good luck with all that. Okay, so let's get started. Let me share my screen. Okay, welcome to UUJEC, Unitarian Universalist for Just Economic Community. Oh, let's start the recording. Do
Okay, I can do that.
that, great. Okay. So here is our agenda. Well, I've jumped in. I should let Terry do the opening. But you can see we've got a packed agenda, but we'll move quickly. So I'll stop share. And Terry, you want to go ahead and get us going?
Did you want me to do something I don't?
Oh, generally, okay. Generally, you'd say a few words of welcome and
Oh,
maybe
okay.
like to tell us
I
if
can do that. I've been around here for about 13 years and maybe a little less than that. And when I was out of the room, I was selected for co-chair, and I like the mission. What we're doing is really important to me, that we don't leave people out of any opportunity. And it's only gotten worse. I don't know that that's my doing. I don't think so, but
not at all.
if I could just pick the president and the Congress, we'd be in better shape. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, Mondami can't be because he's wasn't born here. Um, Welcome everybody. Happy to have you. I'm tuning in from Ames, Iowa. The looks like Lucy got admitted.
Yep, I got it.
Thank you.
Hi,
Okay.
Lucy. Long time no see.
All right. All right. So, to get back to our agenda, uh, first up, we have our keynote speech. I met Danny Kane through my radio show Ecologic, which I do with a couple co-hosts. He is from the Institute of Local Self-Reliance, and he talked to us about data centers. And I thought this is something that we'd all want to hear. So his program is titled Turning Local Issues into a National Movement, Lessons from the Data Center Fight. So I will stop my share and turn the meeting over to Danny.
Cool. Thanks, Sally. And thanks, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. Sally, I had a great time on your radio show. It's good to see you again. And I'm happy to talk data centers and what I've seen and learned in my research. Just so I get this right, I have 20 minutes and then Q&A, or is it 20 minutes
Yep,
including
that,
Q&A?
that works fine.
Okay.
Look,
Well, I'll go. I'll start. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you all, but I'll share some stuff first. First, a brief intro to me. I work for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, which is a policy and activism nonprofit. that focuses on fighting corporate power and building local power. I think the data center fight is a really great illustration of both of those things. I've been at the Institute for just about 2 years now. I am a former bookstore owner. I used to own the Raven Bookstore in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a writer. I have several books out of poetry and nonfiction. And at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, I am in the communications department. I do some video stuff for them, and I host and produce a podcast called Building Local Power. And recently, we just wrapped up a 6 episode season of Building Local Power that looks into the data center fight and the issues and people behind it. So I guess I encourage everybody to listen and check out the podcast. I'll give you a little bit of a behind the scenes look at the season and what we learned, but let me just drop a link to our show page in the chat here in case you want to listen and download. I would be really happy to have some more listeners and for you to like, I mean, I can talk about it here, but really the story is best told in the podcast. We worked really hard on it and we're quite proud of how it turned out. Is it possible? Let me see. Can I share my screen? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, let me get my slideshow started. I just have a couple pictures, mostly to keep myself on track, but also you might want to look at some visuals from what I'm talking about too. Okay. All right. So one of the things I like about the data center issue so much is that I think it really is a great example of a really local fight that has turned into a national fight. And like even just like in the 2 minutes that we've been on this call, I've heard some people grumbling about the state of national politics. And I totally agree. But I think if you look closely enough, there's a lot happening at the local level, and those movements can turn national, they can turn global, and I think we're seeing that with the data center issue. So we had 3 main stories that we looked at for the data center podcast, for our podcast series, and I want to just walk you through the stories really quick, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we learned, and then again, I'm really happy to answer some questions. So first, we went to Data Center Alley. I took a trip out there. Data Center Alley is in Loudoun County, Virginia. The eastern part of Loudoun County, Virginia has 199 data centers in operation.
Oh, sure.
And
Sorry, I've got something going on my phone. What did I just do? I don't know what I did.
Where do you need
Okay.
to go?
Please mute, Jane.
So we went to Data Center Alley. It's kind of the epicenter of data centers in the United States. It has been for many years. It's where this fight kind of started, and it's where there's been an absolute explosion of data center construction. So there are 199 data centers operating in Loudoun County, Virginia, 100 more being built, and they want to build much more than that. So it's kind of the epicenter. If you look on the right of this slide here, you can see just one scene of what it looks like in Data Center Alley. That's a youth soccer field. It's a park. And kind of looming over it is a data center. And like, just having that kind of industrial facility right there is quite a striking image. And it was even worse to see it in person. But these things are loud, and the noise is a real issue. Because they require a massive amount of electricity. Often they have to generate electricity themselves, and that comes from a diesel generator. And that causes all sorts of issues when you're generating your own power using diesel, including pollution and noise. So there's this kind of just like hum everywhere in Data Center Alley. And then if you look on the left, you can see we're just driving through a suburban neighborhood with a data center right in front of us, like basically in these people's backyards. And you've got scenes like that all over Loudoun County. Driving the car, I'm in the front seat holding the phone and the recorder, getting footage and audio for the podcast. Driving the car is Elena Schlossberg. She is the head of a group called the Coalition to Protect Prince William County that's working to really kind of stop the growth of data centers and protect the rural parts of that county from this kind of explosive growth. I want you to listen to the podcast in part just to hear her. She's a great character. She has a lot of great things to say, and she has a couple good wins under her belt. They just won a court case stopping a massive data center project, really based on like a paperwork mistake by the developers. They neglected to file a required public notice, and the coalition fought that. and fought them on that rule and successfully kind of derailed the entire project. I don't know if the paperwork mistake was purposeful or not, but it's you see these people are really crafty in what they in the ways they find to fight the data center industry. The most striking thing I saw in Loudoun County, though, was right here, where it like right in the background of this is a massive data center under construction, and me, that's Elena and my two producers, Reggie and Alana, standing there. That's in Tippett Hill Cemetery, which is a historic black cemetery, right in the middle of Data Center Alley, and you can see this is absolutely surrounded by data centers. You have enslaved people buried here. This is a historic, sacred site that's completely being encroached on by data centers. They can't build on the cemetery, of course, but they're building as close to it as they can. And it was just such a striking thing to see, uh, just how invasive the data centers are in Loudoun County. And so we started there because that was kind of where it's at its peak, its apex. And then we wanted to go somewhere where it hasn't taken hold yet. So we went to Tucker County, West Virginia, which is the home of two little towns, Davis and Thomas. I have a colleague that lives in Davis, and that's how we found out about this story. And you can see here, these are two little signs in their beautiful, charming downtowns. On the left is Thomas, on the right is Davis. This is a very rural part of West Virginia. It is the highest part of West Virginia. It's in the mountains. It's about maybe 3 hours west of the capital area. Um, it makes its entire economy basically revolves around outdoor recreation. It's absolutely scenic. The biggest cross-country skiing resort east of the Mississippi is in Tucker County. They have mountain biking, they have hiking, they have art galleries. They really rely on tourism, and that tourism relies on the beauty of the natural world. And it's really a gorgeous place. Um, a mysterious shell company called Fundamental Data has filed a permit to build a massive power plant and data center right in between these two towns. Um, and it's a huge industrial project. It's unlike anything else that's happening in this county. And it's really weird that they want to do it there. But I think the data center developers are kind of throwing everything they have at the wall and seeing what sticks. And because it's kind of operating through this shell company, they don't know who's actually going to operate the data center, whether it's Google or Amazon or whoever. Um, how they found out about this project is a really amazing story. So one resident in town was reading the very back of their local newspaper with all the like the classifieds and the filings, and they saw one little filing, one little public notice that was like proposed project, blah blah blah. Here's the air quality report for this proposed project. It didn't say what kind of project it was. It didn't say who was building it. It was just kind of a requirement that any big construction project files an air quality permit report. And this resident looks at this is like, oh my God, this is a ton of pollution. What is going on here? And she looks at it, and it's a power plant that's big enough that it has to be a data center. And they kind of reverse engineer from this single little listing in the newspaper that they're trying to build a data center there. So she calls the mayor. The mayor calls a public meeting. You've got 400 people crammed into the fire station in Davis, and all of a sudden it becomes an issue. And they form an organization called Tucker United to fight off this data center project. It's unclear whether that's going to happen or not. A lot of people there think it's going to get built, including the mayor of Davis. Um, they don't want it to. They're worried that it will spoil the natural beauty that they rely on for their economy, and bring pollution and noise to this really kind of beautiful, pristine part of the country. And yeah, it's a strange story. It's it just kind of shows how this can all happen kind of secretly, and they're trying to sneak through these projects, but they're really trying to fight it. Oh, in West Virginia, like statewide, one political element of all of this in West Virginia statewide, the governor has passed a kind of a signature piece of legislation that basically fast tracks all data center projects. It makes it very easy to build data centers in West Virginia. They're trying to lure that business from Virginia into West Virginia. So basically, really, the only thing they had to do legally was file that one air quality report. And once that gets approved, they can do whatever they want and build this huge project. So statewide, locally, they don't want this to happen. Statewide, the state house is really trying to encourage data center development. So that's a really interesting political story. The third story we looked at was Memphis. And in Memphis, Elon Musk and his XAI initiative have built a data center called Colossus One. And one thing you run into with data centers is they require such tremendous amounts of electricity that the grid often isn't enough. There's not enough electricity in the grid to power these things. So you either wait 7 years for a new transmission line to be constructed, or you generate your own electricity on site. And what you see on the right side of this image are basically portable diesel generators. Um, it's a power plant that's built from scratch, not permitted. It doesn't go through the usual environmental regulations. They just build these generators on site. There are 35 of them on site at Colossus One. Um, XAI and Elon Musk led the people of Memphis to believe that only 17 of them were in operation. But if you look at the left, that's drone footage from the Southern Poverty Law Center, thermal drone that shows all 35 of those generators were in operation. So the people of Memphis were being lied to about how many of these polluting generators were being operated at the time. What makes this all worse is that this is happening very close to Boxtown, which is a neighborhood of Memphis that was founded by freed slaves after the end of the Civil War. So this is a historic Black neighborhood. It has a legacy of environmental racism already, and this data center is making that worse. So we talked to some activists in Memphis who are doing a lot of interesting things, including what one called liberation science, where he's trying to empower. This is Dr. Sakobi Wilson. He's a professor who's trying to empower the people of Memphis to take their own air quality reports because they don't trust the information that they're getting from Elon Musk and XAI. So they're trying to get people to test their air quality in their own neighborhoods to kind of be empowered to fight back against this. So those are the three main stories that kind of form the backbone of our podcast. And now I can kind of transition into what we learned. Sorry, take a quick drink. This is in rural Wisconsin. I was on book tour recently, and this is off the side of the freeway in rural Wisconsin. I noticed the same thing. My in-laws live in West Virginia, or in Roanoke, Virginia, which is a really conservative part of the state. And I noticed signs like this on the side of the highway too. Um, and like this is the fact that these are springing up in rural conservative parts of the country is really interesting to me, especially because when I was on Sally's radio show, we were talking to an organizer with the Democratic Socialists in New York City, who had similar feelings about data centers. And like that's a broad coalition. You have farmers in rural Wisconsin putting up no data center signs the same way that the socialists in New York City are doing it. And like that's one of the things that's very interesting to me about the data center fight is that this is a hugely broad coalition. People across the political spectrum really hate data centers and what big tech is trying to do to their communities. So that to me feels like an opportunity or at least a lesson to really think about. And so that's what kind of got me looking into this. Another thing that inspired me is this is a book that came out a couple weeks ago. Cory Doctorow is a great tech critic. He's a novelist, but he also writes really good nonfiction about technology. And his book is called The Reverse Centaur's Guide to Life After AI. And if you'll bear with me for a minute. I want to explain this kind of centaur theory. In labor and tech circles, the idea of a centaur is a person who is assisted by technology. Somehow, technology is helping a person do their work better. So, in theory, driving a car, you're a centaur because technology is helping you go faster. If you use a calculator, you're a centaur because you want to do math, but the calculator is helping you do more complicated math. A machine is helping you be more powerful or smarter or faster. A reverse centaur, you flip it. That's when a human exists in service to a machine. And the example that Cory gives of a reverse centaur is an Amazon driver. In their vans, they've got biometric cameras making sure their eyes stay on the road. They've got all sorts of GPS devices tracking their time. The human exists to make the delivery machine go. Because the delivery machine can't operate by itself yet, they need a human to make that machine work. The human exists to serve the machine rather than the machine existing to serve the human. And I think that really works on a community scale too. it feels like what big tech is trying to do is turn communities into reverse centaurs. Like they see a community and they see resources, they see water, they see tax money, they see electricity for their data centers. And so the machine comes first, the community exists to serve the machine. And I think what we really need to do with the data center fight is flip that and start to ask the question of how can these machines serve us? Like, what can Google do for us? How can Google make our community better instead of how can my community make Google better? And I think that's part of why people are so fired up about this. So here are a couple of things I took away from this. One, like going back to that story of Elena stopping in Prince William County, Virginia, Data Center Alley, stopping that huge data center project. That's local activism. It achieved a big thing. It derailed a multi-billion-dollar big tech funded data center project. And like her coalition is maybe 30 people. They're media savvy. They're fired up. They're really passionate. They know how to disrupt a public meeting and they know how to be heard. But it's a small group and they're fighting the biggest companies on earth, the most valuable companies in history, and they're winning. So I look at the data center fight and I see small, passionate local organizing winning against these major companies. And the fact that that's possible is pretty exciting to me. Another thing I learned, like I mentioned with those signs, is that there are still issues that can create broad coalitions. And like we're um, we're told that America is polarized. We're told that there's not a ton of middle ground, that there's no compromise. But then I see an issue like the data center fight, and I see the MAGA farmers and the New York socialists on the same team. And I think there's a lot of power in that. Yeah, technology should serve us and not vice versa. I would really love to see it flipped, and to stop being treated like reverse centaur communities. And I think a solution to this is possibly trying to get big tech to reframe their thinking instead of like, what can these communities give us? What can we give these communities? And then people really love where they live. I've noticed this a lot. One thing I heard over and over again in researching this podcast is that people are organizing for the first time because of this issue. I talked to countless people who had never organized about anything, who are all of a sudden going to meetings, giving public testimony, writing op-eds. People are getting involved for the first time because of the data center issue. And I think it's really interesting, that this represents a kind of breaking point, or it's bringing new people into the fold. I think it's a major opportunity. I think it's going to turn into a ballot box issue. I think in some ways it already has. And I think, any national figures who are ignoring the data center issue are making a big mistake because this is really firing up a lot of people, and getting people really involved and motivated. And I would hope to see, well-intentioned national politicians taking advantage of that. But really, it's a question of agency when it comes down to it. I don't think it's a question of technology. I think AI plays into it a little bit, but I think what's really driving all of this is that people love where they live and they want to be able to chart their own destinies as people and as communities. And they don't want to let big tech chart that destiny for them. They want to be able to make decisions about how their community enters the future and grows. And that's really, really passionate. Another thing I heard over and over again is that the big tech companies, I heard they underestimated us. I've heard that from people all over the country saying that, in trying to do this in this way, big tech is underestimating the power of local organizing. And so I entered this expecting to be like frankly discouraged and depressed because that's how it often feels to research and write and talk about big tech. But I walked away feeling pretty inspired. I think there's a lot of cause for hope in all of this. And I think this resurgence in local organizing and people really fighting for their communities is very important. And I'm excited to see where it goes. All right, I think that takes me to exactly 20 minutes. I will close this out. And then again, I'm really happy to hear questions or continue the conversation with you all.
Thank you. Very good.
Let me move this over to gallery view so I can watch hands. Feel free to raise a hand, put a question in the chat. I will note that at nuclear reactors, at 3 Mile Island in particular, citizen scientists have been trying to get a hold of Geiger counters and do their own recording because again, you don't trust the industry to give you the proper information. And last this past Tuesday, I guess I saw the Versus Goliath series of films that they're doing one every first Tuesday for the next 4 months. It was about Sharon Levine and Rise St. James, where they won a fight against Formosa Plastics.
Mm.
Courts are pushing back a little, so they're still fighting. But yeah, what we do when we get together.
Yeah. I
Um,
see some hands up.
yeah.
I guess Mona.
So, Dick, yeah, we're in the same place here.
Okay, I'm just looking at what it says on the
We're in
screen.
Lopez Island and near Seattle, up in the San Juan Islands. And I've been following this issue locally. And there's, I think, three different issues you didn't address. Some of us have, I think, well, if there's a thought doing AI centers, how would it look? And one issue came up is that, as you pointed out, these things are gigantic. Someone pointed out, I've heard about, is that they don't have to be gigantic. They had a vision of small distributed, very small, well distributed AI centers that would be more neighborhood scale, and that would would only rely on diesel for backup power, and so you wouldn't have it in a very limited sense. And another issue a big issue is the cost impacts. A lot of these places, people are seeing cost impacts when you have big data centers that come in and get subsidies and drive up the price of maybe local electricity and other kinds of things like that. And so a positive vision would say, well, data centers are not distributed way. They need to lower rates, and whatnot. And it's also ordered a computer. It's a Microsoft, so you have to do Windows 11. You need these new computers sometimes. And I expected to get, after several years from my old computer, I expected to get the new one would be quite a bit less expensive because the cost of memory's been going down and everything.
Yeah.
Well, what I found out is the cost of memory has actually been going up dramatically over the last year or so for PCs and many things like that. And when I asked why, the reason was, well, because all the investment now is going into AI centers. They can make much bigger profits from AI centers, so a lot of their manufacturers are switching their manufacturing to the AI, and that's driving up the costs because of reduced supply to the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another really big issues.
Yeah.
A third big issue to me is who's using these things. And
Mm.
you mentioned the data center alley around Washington D.C. And the first thing that comes to mind is, well, one, the CIA, and two, the military are probably the biggest users out there.
Yeah.
And so that's a big issue too. We need to just are we going way overboard on these things for warfare and militarism and everything else like that? And so do you have any comments on those three issues?
Yeah, quite a bit. In fact, I'll try to keep it brief. The military thing is a really interesting point. In Memphis, the NAACP sued XAI about the pollution in Boxtown. They filed a lawsuit, and the federal government is trying to stop that lawsuit on the grounds that the Colossus data center is a defense asset because they used it in executing military action in Iran. So like it is, and that's scary to me. Like you can't fight a data center because they're all defense assets. Like I don't like using AI to determine like which humans get to live. I think that's really scary. And I don't like the idea that you can kind of negate any of these challenges just because the military uses the data centers. And then on the scale thing is really important too, because it's like the guys, I mean, it's really just a couple of guys, the tech CEOs who are fighting, who are running this whole thing, and they're all in competition with each other. And they want to build the biggest, most powerful model. And this is not about making the technology more efficient. It's about making the technology bigger. And so you're right, technology should work. It should get cheaper and smaller as you go, but we're not seeing that because it's about scale and not efficiency. And so if you ask them, they need big data centers. They need to always be running at full capacity. And I would challenge that. Why can't these run at night when the grid has more flexibility? Like, why does it always have to run like it's July 15th, the hottest day of the year? Can we work with the grid instead of
Because
like
you're
bending
starting
the
to
grid?
freeze up.
Oh, sorry. Um, okay, well, I'm not sure what to do about that, but yeah, I think the scale is an important point. And community scale data centers is a really important thing to look at, and I wish more people were looking at that in the big tech world. And I hope everybody can hear me and that I'm not freezing up.
Yeah, I think it may be on Dick Kimona's end because he was a bit uh, uh, not coming through
Okay.
100% clearly before.
All right. Well, thanks for that comment. Lucy, I see your hand next.
I want to shift this a little bit. I'm very interested in localism,
Hmm.
and we're an organization that cares about economic justice. So I care about getting rid of capitalism, which is a big one. Um, but I'd be interested in your comments because my only hope right now is localism
Yeah.
because of where the federal government is.
Mhm.
And so any comments you can make about the power further about the power of what we can do together to get us away from an economic system that is destroying our planet.
Yeah, no, I think localism, I am happy to have landed at a place called the Institute for Local Self-Reliance during this political era of the federal government. I think there's a lot of power in localism. I think with the data center fight, it's obvious. I mean, you're seeing local communities defeating these enormous corporations and the corporations that have the backing. Like the Trump administration is really excited about AI and they're behind this whole thing, or the government of West Virginia is pushing for these data centers to be built, and you're still seeing local governments push forward. Beyond that, beyond just the ability for local movements to turn national, I think politics can really work the way it's supposed to. Like democracy is the most democratic at the local level. And I think that's a question of accountability. Like I am never going to run into JD Vance at the grocery store, but I'm absolutely going to see my city councilman at the grocery store. So in a way, they're more accountable. They have to be. Like they are face to face with the people they're serving, and it's easier to get to them. I can go to the meeting, I can email them, I can get them to pick up the phone. And I think that's how democracy should work. And you're not there. That's not going to solve nationwide issues directly, but again, actions that communities take can spread and turn national. So, like if you start local, it can get bigger. One story that I really loved, it didn't end up making it into the podcast, but there's a town in Missouri called Festus, Missouri. And in a week before a city council election, the city council election showed four incumbents up for re-election. The week before this election, city council unanimously voted to approve a data center project. All four incumbents were voted out the next week. I have a colleague who says you only get to vote for a data center once. And so like that's responsive democracy. Like it's like that's how voting should work. If you make a decision that goes against the best interests of your constituents, you should be voted out. And I think that still is happening on the local level. And I think we shouldn't be worried that these are small scale because again, these things can turn national. And like what's concerning one community is probably concerning a lot of other communities. But like I see a lot of action and hope at the local level. I'm glad you do too, Lucy.
Thank you.
Cindy.
Hey,
First of all, Danny, thank you so much for sharing this valuable information with us. And thank you, Sally, for arranging Danny to be here. I have a couple of questions that are linked. Um, one is I need to make a little comment about two. I was interested in when Dick brought up the whole issue of militarism and data centers. In the course of my research over the years, and this is rather vague, I keep running into Israel as being a leader in surveillance and technology in general. And then I want to link that to something that is coming to all of our attention right now, and that is the passage of legislation for the national or for the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, and there's there's a little section in there that has been slipped in without any idea of who put it in there, that we will be merging the Israeli military with the U.S. military, codifying it, particularly around issues like technology. But also, this will be with our 1.5 trillion ask for the defense budget. This would open all of that up to Israel. We would be actually merged. I have my first question is how if this passes, to me, it's a tremendous threat to the sovereignty of our nation, number one. But could you elucidate anything relating Israel to the data centers and their power in that? And then my second question, I'll come back later. It slipped my mind. But anyway, if you can just answer that one, and I'll try to remember what my first question, a second
Yeah,
question.
I'm not sure I can speak specifically to Israel or that provision in the Defense Authorization Act, but like the military is definitely a factor in the development of AI and data centers. The government kind of let slip how they view these in that challenge against the Memphis NAACP. But there was a point where the government was kind of playing Anthropic and OpenAI against each other. And like, uh, I think Anthropic was like, we're not going to do that. We don't want our technology to decide who gets killed in a military strike. And the government basically cut them loose and canceled the contract and signed with their rival. And like, that's just all kinds of terrifying that the government is like meddling in competition between two companies. And not to mention just like the use of this like error-prone technology with defense implications. It's totally a military thing. I think it's not a coincidence that a lot of this is happening in Washington, D.C. or in the metro area in Loudoun County. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth paying attention to the defense element of the whole AI data center thing. It's absolutely a factor. I wish I could have spent more time on it with the podcast, but it's a little bit beyond the purview of our organization. We don't do much with defense issues, and like I had to stick to the mission, but it's certainly worth looking into. And let me know if you come up with that other question.
I did come up with it.
Okay.
Okay. The climate impacts of the
Yeah.
data centers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is like you're talking about. This is just like, I mean, one of the things that's frustrating to me is that it kind of feels like people have forgotten about green energy with the data center thing. It's like, wow, we have this like massive new demand for electricity, so we're just going to like build diesel generator. Like we're still using fossil fuels for this. Like, there's very little discussion about how to use green energy to power these things. And I think one of the reasons is because of just the massive power demand. Like you've got 150, 250 megawatts, and like that's just a lot of solar panels. It's almost an impossible amount of solar panels to power that thing. And so, like for me, instead of like let's build diesel generators, I would be like, how can we adapt this technology so it can be powered by green energy and like be in harmony with the planet and the future of the human race. But again, I'm not a tech billionaire and I never will be. So I don't understand how they think. but yeah, and it's like people, one of the things people ask me when I tell them I'm working on this podcast, they're like, how much water do they use? And what do they do with the water? What happens to the water? And like that information is amazingly hard to come by. A lot of this stuff is hiding behind NDAs. They're being really secretive and sketchy about it. And like you would think if this company comes into town and be like, we're going to use this much of your municipal water supply, there would be like details forthcoming about how it would get used and what happens to it after it's used. But it's really amazing. What should be a straightforward answer is not. But like the climate is a really big part of this. So yeah, yeah, definitely. One of the things I think, like the question of like what's motivating so many people to get behind this, and the answer is like it just touches on a lot of things. It touches on local sovereignty, it touches on economic development, and it certainly touches on the climate. And like all of these things together are bringing people to this fight. But good question. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, what kind of employment will data centers create? I'm wondering if they're going to suck so much energy and water that we're going to be left with less potential for more employment than we would do without it, especially if they push up the rates and everything, then
Yeah,
would be a drag. We have one proposed for our community in Ames, Iowa,
yeah. Oh man.
and
The
people were very upset about it.
Yeah. Understandably. The jobs thing is like that's what they promise to get the tax breaks. Like, you'll get a massive tax break for a data center on the promise of job creation. Someone did the math on I live in Ohio. All of the tax breaks that Ohio has handed out to data centers, it amounts to $1 million per job. A data center is going to create somewhere between 10 and 20 permanent jobs for like a $1 billion facility. It's a comically low amount of jobs. And if you do the tax break math, it's ludicrously expensive per job because they run themselves. You just need, again, it's like you need a couple reverse centaurs in the building to make sure the machines don't go rogue, and everything stays on and operating. And then you say like, oh, well, there are construction jobs. Construction is so specialized that often they've got like Facebook has a group of data center construction dudes that go from site to site. They're not local jobs. They're in-house construction people doing the complicated work of wiring these things. So like the job creation isn't there. And then like on the other hand, the technology they're powering, AI, the math for AI, you're investing more than $1 trillion in AI. The only way that money comes back is if AI replaces a massive number of jobs. Like the math of this is based on job losses. Either AI loses money forever or they make money by replacing a lot of jobs. So like the job question is a really big one. It's really serious. The data center jobs aren't there, and the technology really kind of has to come for our jobs if they're ever going to repay their investors. So I would encourage the people who are making decisions in Ames, Iowa, to like really scrutinize any promises about jobs that you hear. Sally.
Yeah, regarding West Virginia, I remember doing an ecologic episode a couple of years ago with West Virginia Rising. Warren was saying that, the unions want to build green energy, but Kitchen controls everything, and all we get is coal jobs. They shut down every other industry, so that there's no option. And I totally get how people love their homes, and we just have to make sure that not in my backyard means not in anybody's backyard.
Right.
And I know Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has introduced a national moratorium bill so we can get our heads around this before we start permitting more and more of them.
Yeah.
And the final thing is in terms of the water, I understand it's used for cooling and it has to be clean water because electronics do respond well to polluted water. So, and it's a huge amount.
Yeah.
So-
Yep. Okay, well, if that's all the questions, I really appreciate being able to come talk to you all. And thanks for listening and thanks for the great questions.
Well, thank you so much.
I just put a question in the chat. I don't know if
Oh,
it's
okay.
it might have already been answered just looking at the chat, but
I see.
sorry.
Yeah, it's the the data centers built for AI, those are really the ones we're talking about. They're called hyperscale data centers. They're the ones that cost $1 billion. They're the ones that use 150 megawatts. Infrastructure for like the rest of the internet, the non-AI internet, can really be distributed. Like you can have a regular internet or cloud storage data center in a closet in an office building. What you run into is the trouble is with the scale. And the scale they want to build these is very hard to distribute locally. And again, it's like we don't have to let them, we can kind of force them to figure that out. That's a tech question that they should be able to answer. So what I'm talking about and what I think a lot of people are talking about, and most of the data center projects that are being proposed are hyperscale data centers. They're the ones that do the damage. You can be much more flexible with the infrastructure needs for the rest of the internet.
It's true. We've already got the other data centers, and they haven't been causing too much problem. You know, less is always better, but yeah, but
Yeah.
when they get to the scale, it's crazy. Thank you, Danny, so much. I
Yeah.
really hope that our organizations continue to work together
Yeah,
because
stay in touch. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
thank you. All right. Let me. All right. So we'll turn this over to Jane for our financial report as we get into the business portion of our meeting. Are you here, Jane?
She has been here. I don't know where she is now.
Hang on, let me see if I can see if she's still with us.
There she is.
Oh, yeah, Jane, can you unmute? Participants.
Jane, unmute.
He's trying, I think.
It should be the bottom left corner of your screen, the little.
There we go.
You got it, you got it.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm not used to doing this on my phone, and I kept pushing
Oh.
the button, and it wasn't
Oh,
working.
boy. All right, well, here's your first chart.
Alrighty. So here we are, and what we're looking at are income and expenses for the past 4 years. As you can see, the 2023 income and expenses were both considerably higher than they have been in more recent years. And it's not so much that things are falling apart with us, as that 2023 was the time that we had our last conference. So we both went after more income and grant income in particular, and had higher expenses due to the conference. In the blue on those bars show programming expenses, and the red are various administrative expenses, salaries, internet. A lot of our money is spent maintaining communications so that we can get the word out with individuals and UU congregations across the country. In 2025, our total income was fairly modest, only $4,400. But our expenses were modest as well, 10,465. Moving on to 2025, the totals were income of 6733 and expenses of 4960. So we actually took in slightly more than we spent, which is fairly unusual for us. We continue our webinars. We're not spending quite as much as we used to for General Assembly expenses, since there's so much more going on online. For 2026, since we're not done with the year yet, what's shown there are our budget figures, not our actual figures. and we're budgeting income and expenses of both of $7,200. The bulk of our income comes from individual donations, although we do have some very consistent congregational supporters. And I'd encourage you all to ask your congregations if you make donations to various UU causes to make us one of them. We are currently operating without the services of any sort of administrative assistant. And we're thinking about changing that. We're trying to update our website, and we continue to have webinars like the one we just had, where we need support to get the word out and to put results up online and so forth. So we are thinking of beginning again, hiring at least occasionally this support staff so we can get that kind of work done. At any rate, our $7,200 budget for the year includes both our webinar expenses and our continuing expenses for updating our internet connection and for continuing to develop curricula and making them available to congregations. Do you want to go on to the next slide, Sally?
Yep.
This is the latest report. I guess maybe the title should really say Treasurer's Report 2026.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. Anyway, it's showing activity through June. Our to date, our income has been $2,600. The large majority of it through individual donations, and congregational donations are a bit below $400. The congregational money is just coming in now for the most part. At least it seems that a lot of congregations have fiscal years that end in June, and then at the very end of the fiscal year, they send the money into us as contributions if they're going to. At any rate, our expenses, as have been very modest. Mainly because GA isn't as expensive for us to be involved in as it used to be, and we're not quite as active as we used to be at GA since the online system, at least we haven't figured out, I don't think, but Sally will tell us more about that, but we don't have quite the expenses we used to have for General Assembly. We continue with our webinars. I think people are getting a lot out of them, and that's the major expense so far this year. So I guess that's the report.
Thank you. All right. Anybody have any questions or comments on finances? Lucy?
I'm interested in how we might raise more money.
Like that too.
I did something this year with Ministry for Earth, a book study group, and I found out that they are no longer doing membership fees, which was interesting to me because before I signed up for it, I sent them a membership fee of what I thought it was, and it turns out they were happy for the contribution, but it wasn't what they're doing. We still think we're doing membership, but we have not put a lot of energy into that. So the way they're raising money is for any event they have, they ask for money. And we have not done that, for example, in our webinars.
Right.
We, during the webinar, we don't say, please make a contribution or whatever, but that is one of our major expenses.
Right.
So anyway, I just want to raise the other side of this, is how we might think about either increasing what membership means or finding other ways to raise money. by
And it's,
communication.
yeah, it certainly seems that every webinar, as part of the introduction, we could say something and make it clear to people that we are, a voluntary organization that depends on contributions, and maybe
And maybe
direct
a way
people
to
to the
make a
website.
donation,
Yeah,
at the event.
right.
Yeah, I've been Voter Choice New Jersey was very good about getting people to sign up to their lists and their donations with a pitch inside their programs, and that could certainly be a quick thing that we could do that might raise awareness and maybe some dollars. I if for things like a conference, I really like a sliding scale type admission fee because I think we're economic justice. We don't want to leave anybody out, but we do need to have expenses to pay. And if those who have a little bit more can give a little more, we can invite. I mean, some of our board members have been recipients of scholarships and have done amazing work for us. So that's a thing to keep in mind. And of course, we need to look at the grant world and figure out. We've done successful grant writing in the past when we've had a specific program, and that's also always an option. All right, I guess our next up is our healthcare task force. Bob, you want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure, I'll try to say just a few words. First of all, for working class people right now, and I think a lot of surveys will support this statement, affordability is the big issue. Again and again, working class people talk about affordability, affordability, and affordability. And when working class people talk about affordability in this country, attention is frequently faced on housing costs. And of course, for last year's General Assembly, the UUJC had some major programs about housing costs, 25 when we were in Baltimore. The other major topic you hear about is healthcare. And the healthcare task force really tries to do two major strategies in responding to healthcare needs in this country. One is we support lobbying, and of course, for a number of years, I think 20 years perhaps, UUJC has supported essentially an expanded Medicare for all, universal health. And we continue with that strategy, even despite the nature of the Congress right now and the lack of White House leadership. We're also concerned about other government programs like SNAP and I suppose FEMA and others that are health and safety programs that are being cut back by the Trump administration and by Congress. So lobbying is still important. We also, as a second strategy, put a lot of emphasis now on mutual aid. And when we talk about mutual aid, we're talking about grassroots organizing that is participatory. It's local, of course, qualitarian, and just an emphasis on the sharing of the production of goods and services. And for healthcare, this includes a lot of things, wellness programs, local advocacy programs, very important, assistance during community emergencies like heat waves, for example, or extreme cold. Denver, and the big one, of course, at least in Florida, is food production, where we put a lot of emphasis on community gardening and community meals. And that happens in every season in our part of the world. So it's a major activity through organizations like the Sustainable Urban Agricultural Coalition. There are other things we get involved with, the task force, especially during the last few years. We need a new Congress. I think it's obvious that healthcare legislation isn't going to go anywhere with this Congress or this type of Congress. So we put a lot of emphasis on voter registration, which is very difficult in southern states, especially. What we call voter protection, where we're concerned about older people, people with disabilities, others who just have a hard time getting to the polling places, have a hard time even with vote by mail. Racial minorities have been harassed, and there have been some other problems in Florida. So we're concerned about voter protection, voter education as a mutual aid activity. I've mentioned the problems of emergency weather, and unfortunately, FEMA has a very narrow definition as to what an emergency is. We're not so much worried about hurricanes right now, although they're always a problem. We worry about heat waves and also extreme cold during the winter. And this is what hits working class people very hard. And ice raids, we're concerned about working class people, farm workers, people in the service industry, including nursing home workers who I work with, as I live in a nursing home, and there are others. So ice raids has been an issue. One of the things we've gotten involved with, at least in Florida in the last year, has been protests against alligator Alcatraz. Unfortunately, the UUA was not really very much interested in alligator Alcatraz. I think I know why. But at least 4 or 5 of the UU congregations work together with Miccosukee and Seminole tribes and with other groups, with Quakers, ACLU, and other groups, trying to get the place closed down. And of course, it has been closed down within recent weeks, partly because of expenses. It was costing $1 million a day in taxpayer money, no federal support. It was all state money being taken out of emergency services. Finances has been a concern, but the other reason is just a lot of political protests in the Everglades. And this has been a real turning point for many UUs in Florida getting involved with the alligator Alcatraz protests and with other detention center protests. So those are the main things. We had several, well, actually, we're very active with Labor Day last year. We're active with Labor Day every year. We'll be active with Labor Day again this year. A lot of emphasis on voter registration, voter protection, other things that I've mentioned, as we'll be close to the November elections. But we've done some other things too, probably worthy of mention at some point. General Assembly, we got involved with a couple of workshops that we actually sponsored, that UUJC sponsored. One was about mutual aid, how to do local organizing. It was a workshop. We had some good speakers for that. We also got interested in how to celebrate the American Revolution anniversary in appropriate ways. And that was a very good workshop. These are videos on demand that are available to you. They'll certainly be available after Labor Day, and they might be good webinars. We tried to interest the General Assembly in doing a AIW about the American Revolution to emphasize the continuing need for, well, that the revolution is always a work in progress, concern about voting rights and other things. That issue was rejected, sad to say, but we're kind of used to that sort of thing with the managers of the UUA. They're not always interested in what interests some of the local people. And there's some other things going on, but I think those are the main thing. Yeah, there'll be follow-up on the mutual aid discussions. We do a lot of work with we being Healthcare Task Force with class conversations people and also with equal access. Equal access is the disability rights organization in the UUA. And for at least 4 years, they have been a major supporter of Medicare for all and a defender of healthcare legislation. No surprise, if you live with a disability or if you live in a nursing home, you're always concerned about what the government will pay for and won't pay for. And so we do some work with them, and we hope to have more events in the future focusing on how to do local organizing for mutual aid and related concerns. That's about it. So any questions that come? No, no,
Lucy?
yeah.
This isn't a question. I was listening to a speaker on NPR the other day on citizenship, and she has a book which I recommend. And I just got to the section on healthcare in that book relative to immigrants.
Oh,
And I have to say, I was just astounded to learn how awful it is. I mean, I've known it wasn't great, but it's terrible. I mean, people have nowhere to go for healthcare when they're an immigrant and do not have status. For example,
yeah. Okay, yeah.
Supposedly hospitals will take anyone when they come in, but that's not true. They have to be, it has to be life-threatening for them to actually take someone in an emergency who has no status. And that's just one thing, but it really was, this book is really revealing on how someone who is an immigrant without the kinds of status, even work permits and so forth, cannot get health care. So I think that's a subject we might broach in our group.
In Florida, if you're an undocumented, I'm going to say migrant worker, you ain't going to get health care out of a government-funded institution unless it's done under the table. We had a case almost a year ago of a worker who had lost a thumb in an industrial accident. No, they weren't covered by workers' comp, and even if they had been, nobody was going to go with that claim. We managed to get the amputation done and some other work that needed to be done, but it was all done under the table by a physician who donated her services, and things like that do happen, but it's all sort of done under the table. You don't just walk into a hospital and say, "Hi, I'm a farm worker. No, I don't have any papers with me, but I work for a local farm and I need some assistance with XYZ." No, that doesn't happen. Not around here, it doesn't.
Yeah, in New York City, WBI has been running ads or public service announcements for the health department saying, New York City, you're covered regardless of status. I don't know if anybody puts that into practice, how true it is, but kudos for them to trying. One of the fights that's happening in New York is no more 24. Health aides working 24-hour shifts. I'm fed up with that. It's like, you work a 24-hour shift, your patient has to be turned every 2 hours at night. You're getting paid for 13 and the sleep is disrupted and it's lifelong trauma. So no more 24. Next week, there is a launch of a new national disaster recovery organization, Rebuild, which came through some of the state organizations who are getting together, who have gotten together since Sandy and Ida and some of the other storms. Speaking of large-scale mutual aid, that's
Yeah, we plug it in there.
yeah.
We've tried to get the UUA to plug into that. You may remember a couple of years ago, I think it was 24, we passed a humanitarian services and climate change, and really just tried to call attention to the fact summer is a difficult season. You got to think about emergency services. You got to be plugged into the system before the crisis happens.
Have we reached out to the UU trauma team? They were the ones who came out during Sandy.
I've had some contact with them, not for a year. My understanding is they pretty much respond when invited, when there's a crisis. They have come into Florida, I think about 2-3 years ago now. Not last year, though. But, no.
Inviting them into conversation with Rebuild, the new organization, may be interesting.
Yeah.
And Terry, what do you got?
Well, for us in Iowa, the problem is they keep cutting Medicare. And the effect of this is that there are many communities that you're an hour or two away from any kind of OB/GYN services.
Oh, yeah.
And they want the state to grow, but who the heck's going to move to an area where you can't get a doctor without getting in your car and driving for a couple of hours? It isn't going to work.
Yeah, we have the same with rural healthcare. Very similar.
Terry, were you talking about Medicare or Medicaid?
Medicaid,
Medicaid.
yeah.
Florida, by the way, is a very scaled down Medicaid program because it doesn't like federal oversight, basically. And so it declines federal money that it is actually eligible for. That's a continuing problem. And it's one of the reasons I don't like state oversight of Medicaid programs. Different states respond in different ways. And I've seen the worst of it.
All right. Next up, Cindy, we've got the Peace, Equity, and Climate Working Group. You want to?
Hi, everybody. I really want to thank Tommy, Ruth, Rebecca, Lily, and Brian for hanging out with us as we have our annual meeting here. You know, we do what we do largely for the broader audience, so it's very nice to have your support in this meeting. So thank you for that. So Peace, Equity, and Climate Task Force, we're covering some really heavy duty issues that have been very hard hit this last year. I mean, I think most of us are, at least I am, still reeling from dealing with the realities of what's taking place under the current administration. When we talk about peace and we talk about climate, you know, I mean, both of them are existential threats at this point. I mean, going into the war with Iran, the threat of the use of nuclear weapons, I mean, that's an existential threat. Climate is off the charts and just climbing. The global heating is, global warming is just climbing. We're past the 1.5 degrees Celsius that the IPCC said was where we start having serious tipping points. The reality of that, let me mention a 1.5 C, that's the temperature of the entire globe, including the oceans. So when we include the oceans here, Sally, could I see you?
Want to share?
Yeah. Anyway,
Hold on, let me stop.
the oceans are heating less rapidly than the land mass. So the actual temperatures on land are much higher than they are in terms of the universal temperature of 1.5. So we're having traumatic costs, and we're having dramatic costs with the wars and with with the Trump having raised the
This is Carmel. Yes.
the military budget to 1.5 trillion. That's a 69% increase in military budget over last year. So this is just a devastating hit for us. And of course, it's hit our group too. And equity is definitely a part of that when you start talking, especially about immigration and the ICE raids and the whole economy, because all of this money from either the damage of climate on our own country or the huge financial impact from how the taxes are taken from people is really impacting equity. Those at the bottom and the middle are suffering, and the price of food and all of that. We know of that. So anyway, this has been a real challenge for us. We've continued with our webinars. We continue to struggle. One of the high points are one of the best things that happened for us this year, frankly, was that Gregory Stevens joined our task force, Reverend Gregory Stevens, and he's also agreed to co-chair this with me. So it's helped lessen the burden, and we're trying to reach out to everybody through our webinars. In the past, we've always tried to arrange these things quite well in advance, but with things fluctuating so broadly and rapidly, it's a little more tighter time scale now because certain issues might come up that push other things to the side. Anyway, we've certainly got our work cut out for us as part. Our group focuses both locally. Lucy keeps bringing us back to that, but we also focus on international work, and I've been a part of the UN climate negotiations since 2022, and I attended COP in Egypt, and I've continued to participate virtually all these years. This year in Belém, Brazil, was the first time that we've had a UN climate conference where the leadership at the conference was calling for a cut in fossil fuels, which is absolutely essential. After 30 years, we have not had that. It didn't really make the final paperwork, but it is something that we're working on. And out of that came a Santa Marta conference, which was almost 60 nations getting together to figure out how to make that pathway. And shortly after that, we saw a change in leadership of the country that promoted it, which was Colombia. The left-wing government, Petro was supposedly not elected this time. It looks like there was a lot of election fraud in that. That's what Petra says, and my contacts in Colombia are saying that's the case. We're seeing this around the world where we're really being hard hit by right-wing governments in things that are absolutely essential to all of us. So it's really, really tough. Climate is suffering. I also was authorized to attend the Bonn conference, which is a preliminary to the next UN conference, which will be held in Turkey. And what I learned from doing that is that the Bonn conference eliminated all of the gains that were made at the conference in Belém. So it's a stacked deck. We're working very hard. One things that UUs have typically done is we deal with climate locally, and I really support that. It's absolutely essential. It's also essential that we take on our own government and take on the DoD budget. There's no money there for climate. They're facing off with the UN for leadership. It's just an incredible mess, and but we're doing the best we can with it. If any of you that are attending this meeting today want to be more involved, we'd love to see you join us in the Peace, Equity, and Climate Task Force. We need every bit of help that we can get. It's just a real serious time. We are headed to unlivable amounts of CO2 in our atmosphere, and we're not doing the things that we need to do to actually address it for the younger generation. So I'll stop there. Thank you for listening to me as I went on this rant.
Okay, any questions or comments? Lucy.
I just, if anyone on the call comes from congregations we haven't heard from, one of the things that's really would be useful is how can we help congregations on all of these issues, but I think particularly on climate, we want to be helpful, so we need feedback on what that would be. I also wanted to mention one local thing, just because it's just happened I'm in Salem, Oregon. The city's climate goals department is doing a volunteer event where we drive our cars around the different areas of the city in the middle of summer and take the temperature to see which neighborhoods are too hot. Basically, that's the goal. And then what are we going to do, like planting trees or whatever
Yeah.
to help those areas of the city. So you can volunteer to be in one of those cars driving around.
Citizen
So that's
science.
a local
Very nice.
example.
Yep. Yeah.
Nice. I think congregations should have thermometers in prominent places, indoors and outdoors, just to remind people of how hot or cold
Yeah.
it actually is at the moment. They're good reminders.
Yeah. And of course, we talk about energy efficiency and, do you need your air conditioner? Well, some folks really live in climates where they really need it and can't afford it. So energy democracy and energy justice is a interesting thing, but the basic message is make sure you're not wasting it. And, if you're going to use it for good purpose.
Yeah.
I also want to mention, I'm going to put that screen back a moment. Oops, I got ahead of myself. Okay. Um, Cindy has talked to us about the film Earth's Greatest Enemy, which is currently available, I believe, for watching and hosting a screening at codepink.org. I've got the link there, EGE Toolkit. I'll put that in the chat. So if anybody is interested in organizing that, we will certainly help to do so.
I think Terry has suggested also that we try to have our own showing of that, which probably we should do.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Uh, Carl, you want to talk to us about reparations? Let me put up that screen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes. So my first task in doing my presentation on reparation is that I apologize to the team, the reparations team, because I have had a lot of internet trouble and still having it, and a lot of hacking, and I'm having to learn my software and my internet and my email all over again. So I'm not sure about this, who gets it and what to send out. But so I've been working alone. Now let's see, what do we have here? Is that, can you, I could start, I want to
I
start
just grabbed
by,
some material that, I could find that related.
okay, now, can I start to show my,
Absolutely.
my PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay, just hit the share button.
Carl, I don't think we're ready for a 1 hour presentation. You got something short?
Well, I think it's unfair for you to give everybody else their time and then tell me to cut mine short.
But no, Carl,
Okay.
I have the experience that your PowerPoint lasts an hour and nobody has spoken for an hour yet.
Okay, but I don't think you know that this PowerPoint does not last an hour.
Well, I was
Okay.
just trying to make
All
a
right.
pre-call, sir.
All right, let's just, Carl, go ahead with your presentation. We'll.
Oh, okay, well, I don't see how to get to my PowerPoint, but do you have a copy? Can you show a copy of the brief outline brief presentation I sent you, Sally?
Do I have it? Oh boy. Is that the document you sent just the other day?
Yeah, my most deeply held belief
Yes,
about
yes, okay. I
reparations.
do have that. I can, where did I put it? Okay. Reparations.
I'm afraid to look for anything because I might cut me off the Zoom. But
Okay, here it is. I got it. Okay. Okay, stop. Okay, share. Here we go.
okay, thank you so much. Okay, this is my belief. In reparations, I would like to say that now that I'm looking at reparation, I see reparation as addressing the soul of our nation, addressing the core principles of our nation. So the most deeply held belief about reparation is reversal, is that we as Americans need to focus on how we got there. We got there because we learned and we were taught the foundations of our society. And we were taught that by untruths and distortions. I'll get to a quote by Milton Almeida on how that happened. But first, I would like to talk about the soul of a nation, the soul that we don't talk about very often. And it comes from this old Scottish blessing. If there's righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there is harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. If there is harmony in the nation, there will be peace in the world. So my sense is that Martin Luther King said, you don't legislate morality. You have to win hearts first. And I think the Scottish blessing iterates that or symbolizes that or represents that perfectly, is that we have to be good people before we can expect to have a good nation. And racism and enslavement and how we got to enslavement did not make us good people. So that's where I start. So we have been taught our social oppressions and we have learned our isms. And most importantly, we have learned our views of others. Therefore, we can unlearn them. And that's my focus in reparation, is unlearning. How do we unlearn all of the isms that we have learned and been taught as children? You might remember the song from South Pacific. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8. To hate all the people your relatives hate, you've got to be carefully taught. Now, that was a perceptive person who made that statement. And I think that they knew something about racism, and that was from the South Pacific, which was, I forget when that was copyrighted and produced. 4 years ago, when racism was blatant. And so they knew something about how racism began and how it was sustained. And so I think that that's what we have to look at, is how is it sustained and how do we unlearn this and unteach this, virulent type of, poison that, continues to, I think, erode the core of our nation. My belief in the learned explanation of society is long held. My master's thesis was in 1981, and it was entitled "A Differential Portrayal of Black and White Television Families." Even as a young person, I could sense how I was presented as a Black man differentially from the presentation of white men. Okay, so if we as a nation are constantly fed differential and negative images of our culture and others via various genres of media, entertainment, and commercials nowadays, we eventually see our differences as reality. And that's what's happening today. When these media images center on gender, ethnicity, culture, and racial differences, our society will inevitably become negatively prejudiced. And can you scroll it up? These learnings then become our cultural foundation for relating to and governing other groups. And now I can see that this differential portrayal and this negative portrayal of other is becoming international and global, especially when other nations try to assert their own dignity and value in reference to the United States. They become more and more identified as troublemakers, and that means a lot of different things. But the notes from Irvin Goffman in his Stigma, Notes on the Management of a Spoiled Identity, again, kind of confirms and supports this notion. And it said, for example, in an important sense, there is only one complete unblushing male in America, a young, married, white, urban, northern, thanks, son, heterosexual, um, Protestant father of college education, employed, of good complexion, weight, and height, and a recent sports record. Every American tends to look out upon the world from this perspective, and I call that the dominant culture perspective. And I'll use that later. Every American tends to look out upon the world from this perspective, this constituting one of which becomes a common value system in America. Any male who fails to qualify in any of these ways is likely to view himself during moments at least, as unworthy, incomplete, and inferior. At times he is likely to pass, and at times he is likely to find himself being apologetic or aggressive concerning well-known facts about himself he knows are probably seen as undesirable. Now, another example from this, and you can scroll in all the way up to the top, Sally. Another example of how we differentially portray and negatively portray one group versus the other is by omission. We did not. An example of this potential for society to leave out the goodness of others is the long-term program of the Lone Ranger. He was portrayed in society as a white man, but in reality, the history of a Black U.S. Marshal by the name of Bass Reeves is strongly believed to have been the basis for the story of the Lone Ranger. And you can see that in that's the Black Gun, Silver Star, the life and legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves. He did things like, instead of a silver bullet, which I thought was pretty stupid of the Lone Ranger to fire precious metals out of a gun that he would never return. Bass Reeves was associated with the silver because when he would go out on a search or warrant for a wanted criminal, he would leave a silver dollar with the families that he would spend the night with. They would tell him that's way too much money for just a meal and a bed. But that's where the silver bullet came in that related him to the Lone Ranger. The disguise is that he never wore a mask or anything, but he did have an Indian, counterpart that was with him all the time because he worked in territories where a lot of the criminals were American Indian. And so he had a guide that could speak the language. His name wasn't Tonto, but the Lone Ranger had American Indian, kind of like servant to do his bidding, and he was just there not to interpret the language, but just to be near the Lone Ranger. So they lionized Lone Ranger as the white man who had who was so good, he had a faithful minority person to support him. So it's almost like that was again elevating the image of the white man instead of being honest about it. And other elements, an aspect of his life was also similar to what some of the things Lone Ranger did in our dramatic representations of race. Now, Martin Luther King basically said, and this kind of comes to the point of why I'm looking at not trying to legislate anti-racism, but why I think we need to look at unlearning the foundation of racism. And if you look at the Voting Rights Act, it had a life of 48 years. If you look at Roe v. Wade, it had a life of 49 years. So unless our hearts of love, we have hearts of love, we need to fight these fights over and again. So Martin Luther King had a point. You can't legislate morality. And I think that's what our society is facing now, an existential period of low morality when it comes to equality among the races and all our isms that we have learned. So this unlearning, one of the ways I think I am experimenting with, and again, I haven't talked to the team about this at all, but I want to start looking at including some of the people of color heroes and heroines as history, as fact, not as superiority versus and over anybody, but just that this is the basic morality that Scottish blessing talked about. If there is beauty in the character, and ultimately that will result in peace in the world. So I think we need that morality of attributing goodness to everybody where it is due, not just to make them special and like, look what this black race did, or look what this Hispanic race did, or look what this white race did. I think we have to get off of that horse and start looking at the fundamentals of humanity. Okay, and the next page, please, Sally. And before we go, stop it right there. Before we go, there's a quote in that talked about the evangelists that went to Africa to Christianize it. And one of in Barbara Kingsolver's novel, she mentioned the fact that one of the trainees in a state of confusion approached the priest and asked, "Why are we here? These people are without sin." It's like, why are we trying to change these people? Because there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing unholy about them. Milton Alameda, in his book called Manufacturing Hate, How the Western Media Demonized Africa. They demonized it for one purpose, to make sure that these people were, let me find the quote here. Okay. Okay, I got it here. As my book shows, and this is Milton Alameda in his book called Manufacturing Hate, How Africa Was Demonized in Western Media. As my book shows, these realities were not reflected in any of the writings of the so-called explorers, the European colonial officials, and later professional journalists who wrote about Africa in the earlier era. Their main task was to demonize Africans to justify the violent conquest and subjugation that enabled resource plunder and labor exploitation. Moreover, the portrayals of Africans as superstitious savages belied the fact that Europeans themselves were very experienced in some of the practices for which they denigrated Africans. In African Kingdoms, Basil Davison, a prominent British historian, wrote, Africa, long thought of as breeding grounds for the occult, was more than matched by Europe with its own manias for alchemy, astrology, and witch burnings. In the 15th century, superstitious parishioners often danced among the graves in the churchyards in hopes of protecting themselves from the plague, while the skulls of plague victims peered quizzically at them. During the same period, Germany was burning an average of 2 witches a day. Europeans, Davidson added, moreover, were constantly duped by promises of miraculous transformations and cures. Elixir of life, magnets to attract diseases from the body, magic potions, and healing fragments of the true cross were common. Even such prominent intellectuals as Thomas Aquinas and Roger Bacon, the Philosopher's Stone, the mystical charm of alchemy supposed transform dross into gold. Now, I don't know what dross is, but I know it's worthless. But it could be transferred into gold according to some of the intellectuals, Aquinas and Bacon, if you could get the Philosopher's Stone. Yet, despite their illusions, Europeans saw themselves as paragons of dignity and sensibility, while regarding faraway Africans as frightened primitives and painted witch doctors. So that's hypocrisy par excellence. So basically, what I'm hoping to do is work at the local level with our politicians. We already have the ear of Joe Comerford, and try and work with the local school systems to infuse mildly at first the accomplishments and the genius of people of color. One thing we may not know is that the youngest doctor on record was a dark-skinned person, not Dookie Howser, but an Indian man of 17 years old. He was the youngest doctor, but they made the story about a young white boy instead of being truthful. One of the youngest people to work for NASA was an African-American young lady at 14 years old or something like that. A genius. Do you see a program involving dark-skinned genius? This is what I'm saying is the heart and soul of our nation right now, that we have to unlearn. Again, quoting the words of the South Pacific, you've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8. And to go back to that Scottish blessing, if there's righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there is harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. If there is harmony in the nation, there will be peace in the world. And this, I think, shows the tentacles of how important it is to be an honest person. And we're not teaching honesty. We're teaching the romanticized versions of our leaders that talked about liberty so strongly and eloquently, but at the same time held slaves. And this, to me, is a hypocrisy of the truth. And we have to start looking a little bit closer at some of the fundamentals of humanity and not trying to legislate those fundamentals of humanity. So again, working at the levels of beginning school, I'd like to see the infusion of more truthful portrayals of who is a genius. They can be black, brown, white, red, etc., and etc. But we have to teach equality early and before it's too late. So this is just scraping the surface. And I hope anyone who has questions, who has concerns, or who has a different agreement will talk to me about, will talk to us and our team. And I certainly hope that I have the skills of learn enough skills for our next Zoom meeting. And we can discuss this in detail. So if anyone has some comments, I'm open and hungry for your thoughts on my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement, and I think we should be starting to put out some educational material about some of those lesser known folks of all various ethnicities and genders and what have you that folks can use to start spreading words.
And I think in the beginning, I would not like for it to be a indictment type of thing. A lot of social justice is based on indicting somebody. You know, you politicians are, you know, doing the wrong thing here and there. But I would just feel like I would just like to present that in the school system at the local level quietly, not in a confrontational manner, but just quietly. Let's include, you know, Bass Reeves. Let's include, you know, Maruti, you know, the youngest medical doctor on record so far. Let's include these people of color and their contributions. For instance, when Theodore Roosevelt, quote unquote, charged up San Juan Hill in the Spanish-American War, instead of charging up under fire, the story goes that he did not go up San Juan Hill until all the fighting had stopped and a black soldier from the 10th Cavalry, all black, had taken the colors of the Rough Riders from a wounded white soldier and the colors of the 10th Cavalry, all black soldiers, to the top of San Juan Hill under fire. That was the story. When Theodore Roosevelt finally decided to go up the hill, he was greeted by 6 hand-picked reporters. It was a show. He was a showman. They leaped at the chance to tell the story of Theodore Roosevelt going up San Juan Hill. So it was not questioned how he got there or whether he was telling the truth about going under fire or not. So those are the stories that need to be, you know, talked about. And I think it would behoove us too. Lucy, please.
I just want to say it would be good to involve some religious education people in this discussion. I believe I was a religious educator before a minister. I think Sophia Lyons Foz had a book on international ways of looking at religious education. Anyway, I'm just saying we need some people who are actually in the church doing this now to be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say something.
Any more thoughts?
Um, yeah, I was thinking, many of your stories I've heard before, and I think it's just because I read pretty widely, and so and over the years, and especially recently, the Lone Ranger story, quite a few different ones I've heard. So the word is getting out there. I didn't hear that when I was a kid and saw the Lone Ranger, but but many of those stories are spreading around, and but maybe kind of hit or miss. So, the question is, can we make those into a larger uh, narrative, as you say, that gets into the schools and things like that? And one of the issues I've heard there is that that civic education has suffered a lot in recent years, apparently. And this would be a good way to, instead of having these stories that circulate through various social media or other media, depending on which you hit some groups, I might see them, but other people might not see them. So any thoughts about how we can actually get some real civics back in the schools and colleges, and then in that civics have a lot more diversity, and Howard Zinn and people like that have been providing the material for decades, and it's sort of, I don't know how much it's happening, but maybe kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, New Jersey, I know
Well,
has
yeah.
curriculum.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, New Jersey Amistad curriculum. I don't know how widely it is actually used, but it's out there. And Westwood Board of Ed got attacked by some folks who were I don't know, LGBTQ, anti-trans, whatever it was, and they got pushback from the citizens, and those Board of Ed folks were dumped. So there are attacks and there
Yeah.
are pushbacks. So yeah.
Well, that's why I'm saying that I would like to work at the local level with my local politicians and with our local teachers, and not to, like I said, be confrontative, not to come out and just defy or denounce anyone negatively, but just to make it a matter of fact. It has to be a gradual, it was not so gradual in the beginning. It was gradual in that when Alameda and when the Europeans went to Africa to identify cannibals and escape from wild animals to show their bravery and strength. Not many people read that, but it was by osmosis, I guess, that it was transmitted to the whole culture, you know. So, yeah, it has to be carefully taught, just like racism had to be carefully taught. But,
But Carl, I
you
was
know,
thinking of sort of a counterexample. I read Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness many, many decades ago, maybe in college or high school. So some of that counter narrative has been out there for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
but it wasn't presented that way in the beginning. It was presented as the truth. And most people who read him uh, probably did not feel that they were that there was a controversy about that issue. So it a lot of those came from the magazines, the very prestigious magazines even had that slant to them. And National Geographic, or what, way I forget what their names were exactly in those days, but yeah, they were really credible magazines and sources, but they still slighted the Africans for, whatever wasn't convenient for colonization.
Right.
And that's what Alameda said in his book, that the character had to be destroyed so that the subjugation would not feel like they were, what do you call it? Uh, make doing committing a crime against a human,
Right.
but for the committing a crime against someone who was close to an animal. So yeah, so in a sense, if I'm looking to do this presentation here locally, about the presentation on the slideshow slowly to people so that who might be receptive,
Mhm.
and then go from there. And like I said, I want to be careful about this because that's why I'm so interested in your feedback, because you all are the closest people to me and to this idea. And I need your input to tell me what are the, you know, Achilles heel for this approach and how should I approach it. But I think that's the only way to do it without confrontations like, the 60s showed. It was revolt. But I don't want us to get that desperate again. And I think we need to see progress. And we won't, I don't think, need to get that desperate as it was in the 60s where people were shot and killed for protesting.
Terry?
I just wanted to mention that culturally, black music is our soundtrack, and Trump
It's our
loves
what?
it's our soundtrack. It's what we listen to, and Trump loves rock and roll, and that's all from it's an outgrowth of African American music. Um,
Absolutely.
it's just silly that they can repudiate the people, but embrace the music. It annoys me.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
That's hypocrisy.
Mhm.
And you can't have the hypocrisy as a foundational point of a culture and expect it to be successful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, the next thing we have on the agenda is GA, and I'll be pretty brief about that. I covered it in the newsletter and in our annual report. There were two actions of immediate witness. One passed, the Defend the Assault on Environmental Protections. Very little debate. Everybody was in favor of, opposing what the federal government is doing to our environment. All Eyes on Delaney Hall was much more controversial because of it. It showed up late. It included a visit to Delaney Hall on Father's Day, which New Jersey activists said was a non-starter. And because we couldn't amend anything, it failed. So there were some creative parliamentary people who figured out a way to get two immigration responsive resolutions passed, one specifically opposing ICE and its partners, the other expressing concern about Southwest Asia and Northern Africa crisis. Both of reports, responses to reports that had been presented at GA. And the other two responsive resolutions were about why is there no youth participation or very little youth participation this year, and how can we increase it? So our on-demand workshops, which Bob mentioned, are American Revolution, Work in Progress, Mutual Aid, Love, Equity, and Transformation, and Beyond Capitalism Toward Liberation, a Faithful Case for Eco-Socialism. The theme was Meet the Moment. Last year, this was the big new thing, and they were going to connect us all. I did not see any emails. I could have missed them. Some folks said they did find some information. We should watched again some of the short films that they had used to introduce it last year. The satellite site that I attended at the UU Congregation of Montclair streamed a couple of the most popular cohort sessions and had other breakout discussions, including one on immigration, which was a really hot topic because we're so close to Delaney Hall and because of the controversy. I listed the Meet the Moment cohorts, and we will continue to try and find more information and follow up with all of that. Um, so we can morph the GA discussion into our how can the UUA be more helpful to you discussion, which Kit has offered to
I want to make one comment on one of the Meet the Moment workshops, caring for our parents. Even the title is rather patronizing and demeaning. Elders want to be as independent as possible, and we're not all charity cases, not yet anyway. That independence, that desire for independence, for fulfillment, to still continue to lead good lives, just to enjoy aging, that needs to be recognized. And that workshop, from the word go, didn't recognize it. And that's been a problem
Oh dear.
as the UUA fumbles around with the issues of aging. And yes, the country is growing older. Most religious groups, including the UUA, really don't have a clue as to how to deal with this reality. I just want to make that observation. Even the title of the workshop was rather insulting when you think about it. Hey, a lot of us grandparents and others, yeah, we really want to be as independent as we can. Anyway, that's my 2 cents from the nursing home.
I call it agency. I want to be able to direct my life.
Yeah, and I see problems with how all the UUA is doing these things now. There's you get the impression that there's a small core of people are sort of running things the way they want to run them. Years ago, we could propose sometimes even 2 or 3 workshops and get them presented with a lot of diversity, and a lot of other groups propose workshops. I don't see the same kind of vitality we have now. It's just more of a uniform kind of thing. There aren't any letters to the editor permitted. Everything is sort of very closely monitored, language, and so I'm not surprised that some of these things come out very narrow, because the whole process, the feeling I have the UUA, the whole process is very, very narrowed, and they're not welcoming of some of the diversity of viewpoints that sort of used to be built in when all kinds of groups could put on workshops, and that was okay. That was part of our roles. I don't know how that's going to be fixed, but this loss of vitality is I think a big problem. It's very, very hit or miss now, whether something gains traction. Like the one AIW, I think on the roadless areas and things like that. That came out of Washington State here by some people, Deb Cruz and whatnot. I don't know what they're doing. And broad support, but again, it seems to me that's a lot more hit or miss than it ever used to be.
Lucy?
I just have a question of when the workshops will be available. I'd be interested in the Beyond Capitalism and also the.
Right. Okay. So the way it works is the UUA owns them until I think Labor Day. Through the summer they own them. They're on Hoover, available to attendees only. After that, they give them back to us, and as soon as they do, we will make every effort to get them up on YouTube so that
Well,
folks.
they're already on YouTube, but I have to do it as private, not public.
Oh,
So all I have to do is change the
we'll
settings.
strike that from the recording. Yeah.
I didn't. Are you
Terry,
saying we
if
can
they're
get them
private,
now?
Officially,
No,
they are
because they're
not off until after the UUA releases them.
Okay.
oh, I see.
We'll
Okay.
talk separately.
Will you
we
be able
we
to,
For
agreed
discussion and feedback.
not to use them until after Labor Day.
Okay.
will you send us a link of how we can get to them?
Yes.
Yeah, on Labor Day I will,
Okay.
or thereabouts.
Right. Um, okay, I note that Rebecca, who had to leave, thanked us for Danny's presentation and said her congregation is following that issue actively, and she will share the information with the group. I asked her what she could do to help, and she said things like that presentation are helpful. So we should keep on keeping on with our.
Maybe we should send that out to broadly to our
Yes,
full list.
definitely.
I'm going to send it to my people, my social justice committee in Ames, Iowa, because we're dealing with it right now.
Yep. Yeah, as soon as we take that chunk out of the annual meeting, we should put it up separately and send that link around. I will be sending the annual report out by email as well as posting it to our website, so we could include it in that email.
Our Senator Elizabeth Warren is really putting a lot more scrutiny on the AI centers and how much freebies they are getting in terms of use of electric power, etc. And
Yeah. If we only had 99 more Elizabeth Warrens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just want to follow up with this because I think this is a very important point that when we have these wonderful webinars or conversations, we need to just not drop them, which we've been doing. We need to follow through with things towards action or including more people or whatever it is, because I feel like it's too much hit and miss. We do something great and there's nothing that follows it. There's no conversation, there's no reading a book together, there's no anything. So please let's think about that coming year.
Yeah.
Also,
the viewership on YouTube after it's recorded is much higher than the number of people who go. I mean, I just noticed one had 111 views, which compared to the 15 people we had here today is a lot of viewers.
And Sally, you're trying to get us to the point where we could have discussions on the new website. I think that would be important.
Yes, it's there. It's the forum page. I'll bring it up and show you again. Cindy,
You need to publicize it though. How do you do it?
Hey guys, I wanted to bring something up, that, if I may, about PNC's next webinar. When Sally sent out that link, I don't know how many of you watched it. It was an interview by Dennis Kucinich, or with Dennis Kucinich, by a former, well, far right wing Republican. But it was, did anybody watch it?
I never saw it.
I saw it. I didn't watch the whole thing.
It
was by Tucker Carlson. The interview was.
Right.
I really, really urge everybody to please try to watch that thing. It is the most important critical issue that I think I've seen in my lifetime in terms of the undermining of the sovereignty of the United States as a country. That is the issue that I brought up during Q&A with our guest speaker, that within the framework of the National Defense Authorization Act, someone has put in a section that says that the United States and the Israeli military will be merging. Technologically, data-wise, it's absolutely mind-blowing, especially when we consider we've got a $1.5 trillion budget. If this thing gets passed, how Congress will ever have another say in anything financially related to war, related to militarism, is just is off the charts. It's devastating. Anyway, I got in touch with Dennis Kucinich, and he agreed to doing a webinar with us. However, I'm not sure that it will actually happen, because he was on KPFK Pacifica West Coast yesterday. It's such an incredibly important and powerful subject that I think were pretty small potatoes for him to take it on. However, the issue is that Congress could vote on this issue at any time, in which case it would be too late for us to do anything. Lizzie, I'm bringing this up in response to what you were saying about action. If there was ever anything we did that I think deserves action, is we really need to get as many people to see this as possible, if and ask them to call their congressman and vote no for passing this NDAA. Not only is it $1.5 trillion, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, 69% increase over last year's funding. Everything. It's going to completely devastate any funding for housing or healthcare or education or anything like that. I mean, it's just devastating. But it also, how they're going to go about merging the U.S. military and the American military is just incomprehensible. This has not been discussed in Congress. It has been slipped into a 1,000-page document. If they don't discuss it in Congress, we are screwed. It's just it's so. Please try to watch that. Maybe send that link out that you sent, Sally, to everyone that's on this call today, or to our larger group. Anyway, the deal. I'll get to you just a second, Sally. The thing with Dennis was that rather than schedule it for August, which would be our next opportunity, I'm just saying, if we can get Dennis to agree to do it, we need to do it as soon as possible. No matter what day, time, or night, we can do it, just to get it done and try to get action on it ahead of time. Okay, Sally.
Sure. At the very least, we can record it and spread the recording around, even if we can't get a big audience right away. I put at 2:42 in the chat an article from Al Jazeera saying Section 224 would require the U.S. Defense Secretary to appoint a, quote, executive agent, a single official to coordinate military cooperation between the U.S. and Israel. Work would cover joint research and development, shared production of weapons, and the linking of military systems and data. Eek.
Yeah, and this comes as the majority population in the United States is opposed to any further spending with Israel. They're opposed to the genocide, even within the Republican Party, they're opposed. This is a way and means to codify our relationship with Israel in a way that will be very, very difficult to change. Once they have all of our intelligence agencies working with them, I mean, how are we going to backtrack that? It's going to be almost impossible. This is just, okay. I think that's all I have to say.
Well, Sally called on me to engage in the discussion. It is a little bit late in the day, but it's important for us to think about what UUJEC does and how it does it. Historically, because we're a small group of people distributed all across the country without a lot of resources, we've been able to serve as a center and a distributor of information. We learn things that are important for social change agents to learn, and we let each other know about it. And that has been what we've done for years. And even our webinars are a good example, our newsletter is a good example, and the conferences we held were a good example. But we tried to hold a conference about this time this year and realized that we didn't have a really good way to make it happen. But that's all in service of us as an information source. So the question is, how can we be more helpful to UUs and to UU congregations? And I don't have a whole lot of ideas, but that's the topic on the table right now. Has anybody got an idea that they wish to share?
People like-minded folks that can join us. I don't think we have enough. We're all spread so thin. I mean, I know I am, and I know Sally is. I know most of you are. We're all spread very thin. I think we need more bodies on the line to assist us. How we're going to get that, I'm not sure. I mean, I have really tried.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. I note what I quoted earlier from Rebecca, that she finds our presentations helpful, so more of that is good, and we seem to have developed a fair skill in doing those. Bob, go ahead.
Oh, well, you know that I've always got a lot of ideas, and they mostly have to do with going back to the basics, recognizing that we are grassroots organizations, many of us involved with congregations, some with clusters, focusing on some of the things that can happen at the grassroots. We're forever complaining about Congress. We need to talk about things like voter registration, voter protection. We've talked about dealing with extreme weather, how we deal with that, sharing resources. There's any number of things that can happen, and I've mentioned most of them, certainly in the last couple of years.
Well, Bob, it's true that our congregations are grassroots organizations, but UUJEC is kind of way up in the sky with relate to those grassroots.
I'm afraid
Certainly, we can
I-
motivate congregations, and that's what we've always tried to do.
Well, I agree that UUJC is way up in the sky. I hope that we can connect with and motivate congregations. That's what I have to do. And by necessity, I emphasize these are survival concerns. I've been evacuated 3 times because of hurricanes, and I deal with some other realities as a person with a disability. So, yeah, I hope that my local people can be helpful. If not, maybe I'll go with the Methodists. They're doing some great stuff. Quakers do great stuff. Yeah. Yeah. That's the reality.
I think we should experiment more with follow-up on topics. Because as I said earlier, we hit, we have a great topic and then it's over. But and that's as much for us as it is for beyond us.
All right.
And
One thing we
I would
might,
just like, I mean, I hope that I'll say it again, what Sally has in the website, the website would be one way, which is that we talk to each other on an issue over time and not drop it. But we could also do book study. We could do not just a study on what Cindy's talking about. Get people together who want to talk in a smaller group about that. And what are the questions to answer and that sort of thing. So it's thought through. I don't know what all it is, but I feel like we could experiment more with how to follow through on topics.
Yeah, Sally has her hand raised.
one thing we might do is after we do a webinar, once we put it on YouTube, send out a follow-up email saying, here it is, if you saw it, watch it again. If you didn't see it, here's a chance. And pick a date at some point thereafter, or set up, here's a link to our forum where we can discuss it, and people can read the forum. And let me share that. This is what the forum looks like. Anybody can read anything. Right. Click on a topic and you can read what's there, which is FTC prohibiting junk fees. If you want to comment, there is an RSS. I haven't learned how the RSS feed really works, but you have to log in or register to create poster topics and I think to reply. But that's a fairly simple process. For register, you just email and a password and accept the privacy policy, and you registered. If you have an account, you can sign in. If you lost your password, you can get a new one, and like that there. So
And how can we switch to that being the only web?
stop sending emails. Write on the forum and then send a link to the forum to folks. Because I believe you can respond to the forum directly out of your email. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that's the case. But
That would be beyond our board, that would be sharing with others in the UU.
it's on our public website. It's open to anybody.
Okay.
Anybody can read it, no matter who they are, UU or not UU. If you want to respond or write to it, you have to log in and register for an account.
You know, I have another question after we get done discussing this, Sally. I don't know if there's more discussion on what you just mentioned.
Well, just let me say, if we've had a webinar and at the end of the webinar, we could tell people how to do that on the discussion, that would be useful because we need education.
Yeah.
The question I was going to bring up is particularly in the issue that I just raised, which is a legislative issue. Congress has to vote on this NDAA. I think it would be good. I don't have a connection myself. I know Terry once did have. Is Terry with us? Yeah.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, Terry. You know, the alignment or an in with UU the vote. If we could collaborate a little more with UU the vote, that might be helpful in some of the work we do that has any sort of legislative attachment.
Yeah, Bob used the word lobbying earlier. Basically, most of what we do is issue education, right? Because we're 501(c)(3). So
You don't want to say lobbying, eh?
yeah, you got to skirt around that word and keep your
Separation of church and state. We're always talking about that.
lobbying to a dull roar and focus on the issue education. But
Well, this is an election. It's not like electing somebody. We're allowed to discuss issues, aren't we?
yeah, but when you get into specific pieces of legislation, it gets a little murky. So you stick to the
You have two things you can't do, and one is support or oppose a candidate, or support or oppose a political party. So
And
It doesn't
lobbying
say
is neither.
legislation.
issues are not a problem.
I believe specific acts of legislation or specific administrative proposals. So if we say, for example, call your congressperson and tell him or her to vote yes on HR 56789, that's lobbying.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can do this, can't we?
My understanding is we can do it as long as it is not the major part of what we do.
Yeah, it's
The
And that we
IRS.
don't spend money on it. That the money's the
specific hard and fast percentages or anything like that. But basically, unless we're a specific target, we don't have to worry too much. Just keep it to the general more than the specific. And if we have one particular,
We should have so much time that we could be lobbying.
Yeah, right.
Well, the fundamental issue is that there's everybody in the country wants to be a source of leadership and information for everybody else. And there have been people diluting our currency, to use an economic analogy. And boy, I tell you, on my phone, I get messages all the time. The Republicans are terrible. Give us money to support them. And I'm thinking, what made you the important place for me to send the money? And I am struggling to find a way of engaging in social change that doesn't put us in the same role. Where we create change in a manner that doesn't aggregate power to ourselves.
I think we can do that because I think we have the integrity. But everybody that's out there that's saying, I am going to change the world, doesn't have that intention. I think the first thing they do is change their own bank account. But I think what we're talking about is real social change, real political change. And it's up to us with in my opinion, the integrity that is necessary to get that done. And the webinars we're talking about, the continuation, the follow through, like Lucy was saying, we got to follow through on some of these issues. And because I think we have the right approach to them, and we can't trust other people to do that.
You
And
know,
maybe
if we do that, if we follow that model, that'll mean for every webinar, instead of one meeting, we've got at least two.
Why do we have two?
Because
we have follow-ups.
There's the original and follow-up.
Yeah, I mean, but if we're going to follow through, we might have 10.
Yeah.
But
She
we
said
have
at
to
least
follow
two.
through that vein till it is thoroughly examined and applied, because we're going to run into how do we apply this? That's where we come in.
Well, I think if we go that way, we have to consider that whatever, if there's a webinar that we put out that gets that kind of attention where we're going to have more than one follow-up, that it's going to be, I'm not going to be doing so many webinars. I'll say that. I just don't have the time, but we could do that. We can follow that model, and it might be better if we want to experiment.
And we, as a group, we could decide on the themes for the year that we are going to follow on rather than everything.
And who's going to follow up? It doesn't have to be one person that follows through on this.
No, maybe
we
the
all
task
have
forces.
to pick up the baton. Yes.
The task forces could be that, or we can have an in situ task force that comes up because of the topic. But we can't do everything. So I agree with that. Can we choose as a group that there are certain things we're going to emphasize this year?
Well, for me as a member of part of this group, for me to stay in the group, one of the subjects for me would have to be militarism and climate. It would have to be, or it's just not worth my time, because that's what I'm into. So, I don't know what topics you all might want to choose to focus on. Of course, that includes democracy at this point too. Democracy, climate, and militarism or peace.
I just want to inject here to their point of climate. There is a series on Amazon Prime called Regenerative Agriculture. I don't know if people have saw it, but it's 3-part. They started back in 2020. There was another series, there was another segment in 2023. And the latest one was 2026. That's called Groundswell. And it shows how industrial agriculture is destroying our environment. Mm-hmm. And because they do not do regenerative agriculture, and their techniques is allowing our topsoil to go up into the air or go into the rivers and the oceans. So if you don't do anything but watch the last one, which I think is the most powerful, it's called Groundswell on watch Amazon Prime, Groundswell. And it was produced in 2026. You will see what the farmers are up against. You will see what the environment is up against. When I was in New Mexico as a child, I heard this old realtor in Roswell, New Mexico. He said, there will always be more people, but there will never be more land. And if we let our land go up into the air in the Dust Bowl that almost destroyed our farmland in the 50s, that's what regenerative agriculture will stop. And we have to do that because we're the most virulent toxicity on the face of the earth. Animals don't destroy the earth. They regenerate it. Trying to put 14 horses out on a barren plains, and in 10 or 15 years, that plains was green again.
So, Carl,
So
are you
we could do
this be one of our main focuses for the year, and are you willing to lead it?
say that again.
I said, are you suggesting that this be one of our primary focuses? We are talking about we can only focus on so many things. Are you thinking that this is something that you would want to head up yourself?
I think I could do two issues. One, I want to get back to the soul of the nation and reparations, too. And two, I think at the bottom of regenerative agriculture is the topic that I have looked at a long time ago, but didn't follow through, is one world government. One world government. Until we can stop having enemies in Iran, enemies in Germany, enemies in, Sudan, or in, we're gonna always try to get as much from them or more from them as much as we need from them to defeat them. And we need that one world government to stop this competition for this little bitty ball of green that floats.
Democratic global government, one person, one vote. That's what's needed.
So I
Yeah.
think maybe what we need to do is if every person says what they're willing to work on as a main theme for the year, then we would have some sort of sense. Because if we're going to if we're limiting it, I'm just saying right now what's of interest to me. If other people have other things that they would be willing to put their energy into, we can get it down to 5 or 6 topics maybe. But we also got to realize that if we're the only one doing that topic, we might end up being spread too thin and we're not going to be truly effective.
Our webinars would tell us how important an issue is. If 10 people come or 5 people come or if 120 came, that would tell us something. If people ask questions, if we get one question versus 100 questions, that will tell us what's of interest to the people.
Well, I asked a really big question, and it's going to be hard to come up with a satisfactory and innovative answer. On the other hand, we've been meeting for almost 160 minutes, and I'm thinking we should continue this discussion at our retreat, which often occurs in August or in the fall. Is that okay with everybody?
Sounds like
Yes.
Let me turn it back to the chairs for closure.
Okay. Where are we?
Before we close, guys, this is July. If we're going to have a retreat in August, can we at least talk about when? Because the first part of August, I'm not available at all.
That was loose talk, Cindy. Don't get worried.
Okay.
I have to go to the shop before it closes at 5 o'clock and get my car out of the shop before it closes, and I can't get it until Monday. So
I think we're done.
Here's our final slide with how to get in touch with us, where our email lists are. Our address will be moving at some point fairly soon. But
Sally, thank you very much for all the hard work you've done
Yes,
to make this happen.
Sorry, it was also late this year, but life happens. So
Did great.
It does.
thanks,
But
everyone.
actually, we're just right on
It
our
was a very
schedule.
good meeting. It was a very good meeting today.
Okay.
I'm anxious for the video.
All right. So good night, all. Good afternoon.
Good night.
And thank you to everybody.
Let me save the chat before we head off. Save chat.